Thanks for joining our Tidal Wave of Tablets webinar today. Our sponsors are Winvale and CenterBeam. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kevin Lancaster, who will be the moderator for today, a managing partner at Winvale. Kevin, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone here on the East. Good morning to the folks out on the West Coast. My name is Kevin Lancaster. I'm one of the partners here at Winvale, and we're proud to present CenterBeam as one of our premier partners. And today we're going to be presenting, I think, a pretty interesting topic to the audience here. Just real quick, just overview about Winvale, and I'm going to turn it over quickly here to Shaheen with CenterBeam. But Winvale is more of a focus on the federal marketplace. We do a lot in the state and local arena as well in the public sector. But we are comprised of about 60 different manufacturers that we work with, close to 450, actually more like 500 government customers these days. And our job is to really promote and bring best-in-breed technology solutions and insight to our public sector audience. So with that, I don't want to go too in depth in Winvale. We're here to learn about the tidal wave of tablets, and with that, I'd like to introduce Shaheen Peruz to the panel here. He is the CTO of CenterBeam. He's responsible for the development, implementation, and management of the company's corporate strategy, or corporate security vision, strategy, and programs. Strong specialization in cloud and SaaS and distributed computing, deep technology expertise in areas covering IT architecture, development, design, planning, implementation, core tools, systems, and programming languages. And he is certainly recognized as a thought leader throughout the cloud computing space. And so we're on the call today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shaheen. And feel free to listen in, and we'll see questions here from the participants at the end of this call. So with that, Shaheen.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. I wanted to quickly cover with you what the agenda is going to be for today. We're going to talk about mobile devices and whether they are, in fact, a tsunami that's attacking us or if it's simply a tidal pool. And then from there, we're going to talk about some of the challenges and roadblocks and surprises that you might come across as you're going into your mobile device management and mobile rollout. Talk about some ways in terms of planning your approach to moving to a mobile platform, and finally give you some pointers in terms of how to ride this wave it's coming, whether we choose to accept it or not. So let me with that start right in. First topic we want to talk about is whether this is just a fad or it is something, it is a state change in terms of the way we're looking at IT in the industry. And this is a set of metrics from Meritalk, specifically in the government space, that talks about feds are anticipating increase in the use of PC alternatives. And you can see the metrics here yourself. The number of smartphones and tablets are increasing and have increased, and from a projected perspective, the expectation is that they will continue to grow, and the combination of tablets and smartphones together will outpace the use of personal computers. In more of a industry-wide perspective, let's take a look at what the rest of the market sees outside of just the federal space or government space. As you can see from this chart, there was a amazing phenomena that happened in the fourth quarter of 2010. For the first time ever, smartphones and tablets combined outpaced the sales of personal computers. And projections have it going to about 3 to 4 times the number in 2016. So this clearly is a tidal wave. We're not seeing a passing fad from all pointers and factors that we look at, that mobile devices are really starting to become the endpoint of choice, if you will, by the market, and they're becoming, as devices become smarter and smarter, they're becoming easier to integrate in terms of accessing resources and data from a agency specific or corporate specific. So as we move forward, stepping through the slides here, some of the driving forces that happen that is kind of causing this is that there's a lot of power in the ability to be portable. It gives a lot of control to the end user to be able to do what they need to do. It enables IT to give the users the data they need in the field where they're interacting with their constituents. It increases productivity because they can access the data any time of day, whether it's during business hours or not. And as you can see here, there is a paradigm shift in that the tools and the ways we access data are changing holistically and becoming more device agnostic. So it's really quite a shift in terms of the way that we, from an IT perspective, have to consider how we handle these devices. And throughout this webinar, we're going to try to talk to some points that will help you and arm you to handle that. One of the other drivers here is that you've all been given budgetary initiatives that you have to adhere to. So all agencies are working on plans to reduce mobile cost and in order to meet the President's 20% reduction requirement. And here again is another slide from the Meritalk report on mobile-powered government, which was done in February of this year. So as you can see, there is everybody is making plans and implementing solutions to reduce cost, and one of the best ways to do that is to implement a bring-your-own-device model. A bring-your-own-device model in and of itself is a great idea, and it's one that we've been toying with for the past decade in the IT industry, and something that CenterBeam has adapted for at least the last 10 years. And what the benefits to it are that you reduce the cost by implementing the equivalent of stipends for users to use their own devices as opposed to having those devices be assets for the company. The negative is that you now have a challenge in terms of managing those devices that are owned by the end user. So let's talk about some ways that the challenges there and some ways that we can help. You're going to run into sandbars if we continue down this metaphor as you're going down this path, specifically because of a bring-your-own-device model, but generally speaking because of the agnostic approach that you have to take to the endpoints in contrast to the traditional approaches we've taken. The problem statement is simply this. We've got end users that have devices, and through talking to friends in IT, through accessing information that they may be a smart enough person to figure out on their own, they've created profiles for their accessing their mail. They've created profiles for VPN and Wi-Fi onto your networks. They download applications that give them access to SharePoint instances, and they've downloaded potentially some enterprise apps that you've blessed. The challenge here is that you have no locking ability across this gamut of interfaces and tools and access mechanisms, if you will. And so the risk here is that you have a potential for data leak because of a lack of encryption and because the devices, if they get lost or stolen, you don't have a good mechanism for wiping this unless the user has set up their iCloud. So really what happens is you've got a set of devices out there that you may not have good controls over, but they are accessing your network today, and they are accessing your resources today. As we move forward, we need to think about the paradigm shift in terms of IT. We talked about the paradigm shift in terms of the devices being, personal computers being replaced with mobile devices. Now let's talk about some of the paradigm shifts that are happening in IT that are in corollary to that. In traditional management models, we were used to providing all the equipment from an IT perspective for our end users. In today's world, we're trying to adopt a bring-your-own-device solution, and specifically around mobile devices to reduce costs in managing mobile devices and reduce costs in telco expenses. Traditionally, we used to have a small set of platforms. For example, we would say that we only have Dell laptops and BlackBerry phones, and that's all we support. And that made it really easy to manage those devices and put controls around those devices, lock them down so the user can't be a risk to your network. Today, with a bring-your-own-device methodology, you really have a challenge that you have to deal with many different manufacturers and models to support your end users bringing whatever device they may have bought. Historically, we used to have an IT initiative, or we used to initiate the management and upgrade of devices. And today we can't do that. The carriers really are enforcing or determining when to upgrade the platforms, as well as the OEMs. In the case of Android, for example, the carriers can control when they decide to upgrade the Android platform, In the case of iOS, Apple decides when they upgrade the platform. So the users really don't have a lot of control other than clicking yes, and we have no control other than hoping the user's upgraded. The IT used to tightly control apps and security. We used to lock down the devices and say that you can't install anything unless we tell you to install something or we install it for you. And really that control completely is dissipated in the context of a mobile world. And not just in terms of mobile devices, but as you get mobile users who have laptops, they need to have more access to their systems. They need to have administrative rights so they can get their home printer to work and so on and so forth. So this leaves us with really three options if we come from a traditional IT background. First two really aren't options, but they need to be said. And the last one is really the only alternative that we can look at that makes any sense. The first one is don't allow mobile devices because they're too hard to manage. And if any of us went to our bosses and said that, we'd be looking for a new job. The second one is to allow unmanaged or insecure mobile devices to access our network. That certainly is an option, but not a good one because now we've created significant risk for the agency and the company. The last one is really just to make an investment and to purchase, acquire, build tools to secure and manage these devices that we don't necessarily own. So let's talk about some of the approaches we can take here in doing that. So the solution to the problem is simply that we've got to get some control. We need to be able to deploy policies to these devices. We need to also enable the user to have personal data on these devices, so their personal mail, calendar information, their personal applications, but also have a corporate profile on these devices so that we can have enterprise mail and calendaring, enterprise access to the corporate network via VPN and Wi-Fi, enterprise access to applications that we may have had a third party develop for us but isn't necessarily in the App Store. So we need to give the users the ability to have access to recommended apps from app stores and have access to applications we may have written internally. But we need to have the controls across all these aspects to be able to not only implement them, but be able to deprovision them should something go wrong or awry or we let that individual go. And on the right here, you'll see that we need the ability to enable password policies. And that will help in terms of making it more difficult for somebody to get into your data if the device is lost or stolen. We need to be able to enable device encryption so that if in fact they do get in, the data is encrypted and they can't do anything with it. We should be able to force an encrypted backup so that if they're backing up to iCloud or someplace else, that those backups are encrypted and aren't at risk of data leak from that perspective. We may want to disable synchronization so that they can't sync the data to iCloud or iTunes or equivalent sites outside of the built-in solutions in iOS, for example, so that we don't have that data leak risk. We may want to be able to control the network access and email access and say that if certain situations happen, we're going to disable access. If, for example, the device is hacked, jailbroken, or rooted, we don't want them to be able to access our network and cause risk to the environment. And we want to base that on policy compliance. So the policy might be, I don't want jailbroken phones on the network. If you're jailbroken, we're going to disable email access. You want to be able to wipe a device if it's lost or stolen, but more importantly, you want to be able to wipe selectively the organizational data when an employee leaves the company. So from there, let's talk about some of the MDM functionality. It's important to understand that MDM really is designed, mobile device management has really blossomed in the last year, and mostly because of the amount of media attention to it. This is something that has been around for a very long time in some forms and facets, and we'll talk more about that later. But as you're looking at solutions, you'll want to look at something that has a platform that has support for the multiple different varieties out there to give you that agnosticity that you're looking for when you're building a bring your own device model. So you want to be able to support the iOS platforms, the Android, the Symbian, the Windows Mobile, and so on and so forth. You want to have the control to do selective wipes, not just full wipes. You want to have integration with your email platform so that you, excuse me, you can deny email access if necessary. You want to be able to lock down the device remotely as well as unlock that device remotely if the user is having problems. You want to communicate to the users and send them notifications if specific events happen. In terms of applications, you'll want to have an inventory of applications as well as the access to what applications in the Enterprise App Store they can have. And an Enterprise App Store should be something that lists your applications, not just the stuff that you publish through Apple or Google. You also want to be able to whitelist and blacklist applications so you can stop the use of potentially harmful applications to your network or your environment or potential data leak opportunities. In terms of policies and security, you want to be able to implement password policies, device encryption, jailbreak and root detection, and generally other policies that help you determine if the device is safe or not. Location services are nice to have, especially if you have a fleet of resources and you want to track where those resources are, or if you want to find a device that has been lost or stolen. And then finally, you want enterprise control to be able to push configuration information for email, VPN, and Wi-Fi. From there, we go to which platforms are the right platforms to pick. Now, this is a big conversation that's happening in the industry right now, and I can tell you that if we look at the market share, Android has the market share lead. Apple is number 2. Symbian, Windows, and everybody else is a far cry behind them. So it would seem that Android has the market share, therefore Android's a good option to pick. But if you look at what's going on in terms of a developer perspective right now, Android, because it's built on an open source platform, has become too fragmented. This is a chart that shows that on the left side, if you look at the devices that are 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.33, you'll notice that 90% of the devices out in the market today are on a version 2 of the Android OS, but the current release of Android is 4, so they're a full 2 versions behind what is the most recent and most secure Android platform in the market. Part of what causes this fragmentation is that Google has no mechanism to say you have to upgrade to this operating system because we're going to end of life support for the previous ones. The telcos take these open source operating systems and customize them to their needs, and they customize them to the degree that it makes it very difficult for them to do the upgrades, and it takes significant effort for them to upgrade with that customization that they've built. So they stay behind, they don't do the upgrades, and they're the ones that end up dragging the update of the platform. The issue is that as mobile device management has become so prevalent in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of the feature set for mobile device management have been built into the operating systems, and in the current versions of Android, encryption is a feature that you can turn on or turn off. The ability to do selective wipes is something you can turn on and turn off. But if you go back to the 2.3 and 2.2 versions, you can't do those things. You have to buy third-party applications to do it. So you reduce what you have the ability to control if you don't have the most recent versions of the operating system. In contrast to Android, iOS, Apple has done a great job of saying that when version 5.1 is released, everybody upgrades because we're not relying on the telco to do the upgrade. We're pushing the updates to the end users. And they made it very easy for end users to click, yes, I want the update, and now it even happens over the wire, so they don't have to use their tether to do the upgrade. So what's important in that is that in version 5.1, the MDM APIs that are available for Apple hit every one of the bullet points we covered on the previous page. If you want those bullet points for Android, you need to be on 4.0.3. And as you can see, there's a significantly small fraction of the number of devices out there in the market space that are at the current version of the Android platform. And again, the telcos are dragging their feet on that. The other aspect of this on the right is that the reason developers prefer iOS is not just that Android is fragmented and that they want to write code for the current operating system. When they write code, today for Android, they have to take into account that 90% of the devices are on an older system and have to write code based on those insecure older APIs. So they'd prefer not to do that, so they spend their time on iOS. And there's another metric that says about 70% of new projects are iOS projects versus the 30% that are Android projects, and when polling a bunch of developers. There's also a monetization aspect that helps you as an IT director. If you have an application that is a third-party application designed for a tablet, for example, let's say by a company that you're using their infrastructure and they've now built a tablet application, they are more incented to develop for iOS because of the reasons we talked about, as well as it's much easier to monetize iOS applications. And so you don't have to worry about being stuck on a older version of Android because your application provider won't upgrade their application. So I have a client who has 500 Android tablets, and they're stuck on 2.3, even though the tablet they have can be upgraded, because the developer of the application that they use for their field folks only supports 2.3. So let's move on and talk a little bit now about what mobile device management means and how to think about mobile device management. It's important to understand that you don't really want to think of mobile device management as something new and something unique. It really isn't. What you really need to think about is that mobile devices are just another endpoint on your network. They are little mini computers. They handle what much of the computers did 15, 20 years ago, now in a very small footprint. So the overlap that I'm showing here is important to understand, that the stuff in the center in this Venn diagram shows us that there's a significant amount of overlap between the things that we want to do on traditional personal computer platforms, whether they're Mac or PC, versus the new mobile devices, which are smartphones and tablets. That overlap is getting smaller and smaller as time goes on too. More and more things are going into the center versus the outside. So as you can see here, you really need to take a holistic view to endpoint management, and mobile devices are just another type of endpoint. So if you think of that, you want to, as you're looking at solutions to pick, you want to pick a solution that's going to help you cover the gamut of devices and endpoints that you have to support. Everything from that smartphone to your servers, so that you're not having to manage multiple platforms, so you don't have to go into 5 or 6 different consoles to administer your infrastructure. You're also going to need to look into the capabilities and depth of the platforms you're looking at to make sure that they're not going to limit you as you're looking at new IT initiatives going forward, that they'll help you in terms of what platforms you're picking, what solutions you're building as you move forward in your IT life cycle in terms of building differentiators for your organization. The last part of this is, now that we've given all this information in terms of what kind of approach, how to consider mobile devices, is what do we do next? How should we ride this wave that clearly is a tidal wave before we get swallowed up by it? And there's really 3 choices here. You can either build it yourself, so you can go out and build a solution from scratch to do mobile device management for you, and many over the past 5 years have done that. You can buy an MDM product. There's many out there. You can go to the Gartner top quadrant and pick a list of devices that are, most of them are appliance-based solutions. Or you can find the provider with a holistic approach and solution. And what you'll notice is that there's some things that you need to consider. If you pick an MDM-only solution, the challenges that you have is that if you look at most MDM providers, because of the APIs that are being exposed by the OEMs, you have the ability to manage iPhone, Android devices through both agents or software that's sitting, apps that's sitting on those devices, as well as the APIs that are exposed by the OEM. If you don't have that, really the only way to do mobile device management, let's say you're in an Exchange environment, is by using active sync policies instead of mobile device management. And most of the mobile device management solutions out there leverage that fact to be able to do, they use active sync APIs instead of building a solution for those platforms. Part of the reason for that is they don't want to write software for a dying operating system. Symbian is going away. Nokia has decided that they're going to use Windows Mobile 8 as the platform going forward. Windows Mobile and Windows Phone are both going away because Windows Mobile 8 is replacing them. BlackBerry is unfortunately starting to wane in terms of popularity and fading very rapidly in the market space, and so on and so forth. So if you look at each of these platforms, really iOS and Android are the only thing that people develop against. And as we described earlier, most are developing for iOS because of the fragmentation in Android. So it's important to have a solution that tightly integrates with your email platform in order to get advantage of a synergy between an event happens that the MDM solution captures and a trigger needs to be set in your Exchange Active Sync policies or Lotus Traveler policies that blocks and slows down access to or disables access to email or corporate resources or removes your corporate data from that device based on some event. That event might be the device was jailbroken or rooted, therefore we're going to remove access from that user. There's a significant amount of information that implies that a cloud-based solution is the best way to go. And you probably have experienced this in terms of other areas of your business as well, and including some of the mandates that have come down from the federal government that cloud is something that we want to adopt. The benefits really, if you look at this, there's a 64% of the feds see some positive to moving to desktops being accessed from the cloud. 36% are currently accessing or assessing opportunities for desktop from the cloud or VDI, and 38% are working on implementing cloud technology solutions internally. So in parallel to this mobile device phenomena that has come in and isn't going away, what it has also done is it has really enabled cloud computing. And the reason for that is there are many applications, Windows applications for example, that can be run on a tablet with the right cloud solution in place. And if you do a model like that, you then need to implement a mobile device management to support that tablet. So two things here. You want to make sure that you're reducing your hardware and cost by having a single pane of glass for your mobile devices, your laptops, your desktops, and your servers, so you're not having to, again, manage multiple consoles, manage multiple policies in different systems, and have some incongruent management opportunities. And also you want to, if you adopt a cloud-based solution, your time to market is so quick in contrast to having to build, test, validate, and roll out the solution yourself. Many cloud providers have really done the integration for you so you don't have to. And what's important in terms of cloud providers to pick out is that you want, again, somebody who's got a good breadth of services, a good scope of capabilities, so that they can give you the overlaps between all your endpoints and cover them in a single pane of glass, as well as the synergies between email and MDM. And with that, I'm going to leave you with 6 tips in terms of picking the right partner, and some of these I just touched on in the last slide, but really, again, you want to look at somebody who's got a good breadth of capabilities that they can deliver to you. They've got to have a lot of experience in this space. They shouldn't be new to the market. They shouldn't have just started this because MDM is a fad or cloud is a fad. They have to have significant integration experience, knowing how to integrate cloud solutions with your on-premise solutions so that it's seamless and synergistic. Security needs to be part of their DNA. They can't be thinking about security as an afterthought, which many of the consumer-based clouds out there are. Access controls and access ease for your end users is another very important factor. So they should have mechanisms that make it look and feel and act like it's an on-premise solution even though it's running in the cloud. Transparency is key. Anytime you're going in any relationship with a vendor, you want to make sure that you have transparency into the way they operate, into the way they do things, and